For 3 years I thought I knew what betrayal meant. I was wrong. My name is Timothy McFarland and I'm 33 years old. Each morning, I still set the coffee maker the night before, hang my keys on the brass hook by the door, and try to remember what normal felt like. That day I came home early with takeout in hand, planning to surprise Elena. Instead, I found her in our bed with Colton Reed, her corporate boss. My throat locked. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. Their laughter, that's what I remember most. Like they owned my house, my life. In that moment, standing in my own doorway, something in me hardened into steel. This isn't a story about forgiveness. It's about consequences. Before I go any further, let me know in the comments where in the world you are watching from. And make sure to subscribe because tomorrow I will share a story you don't want to miss. But let me start from the beginning. The takeout bags felt heavy in my hands as I eased the front door open. Chinese food, Elena's favorite when she was having a rough day at work. The house was quiet, except for muffled sounds from upstairs. Then I heard it, her laugh, but different somehow. Lighter. And underneath it, a man's voice I didn't recognize. My feet carried me up the stairs before my brain could process what was happening. Each step felt like moving through molasses, my heart thundering in my chest. The bedroom door was closed but not locked. I remember thinking how strange that detail was. We never closed our bedroom door during the day. I pushed it open. Elena was in our bed with Colton Reed, her boss, the man who'd sat across from us at the company Christmas party 4 months ago, talking about his wife Sharon's charity work, while his hand rested possessively on Elena's lower back. Now here he was, in my house, in my bed. The takeout bags hit the floor with a dull thud. Elena's eyes went wide and Colton scrambled backward, grabbing for his clothes. The sheets, our sheets, the ones with the little blue stripes Elena had picked out at Macy's, tangled around them like a guilty confession. "Tim," Elena started, but Colton cut her off by lunging toward me. He swung first, a clumsy punch born of panic. I caught his arm and answered with one clean shot that dropped him to the hardwood. Elena screamed. The sound echoed off the walls like it belonged in someone else's life, someone else's nightmare. Footsteps pounded up our driveway. Mr. Dawson from next door, followed by his wife. Someone must have called the police because red and blue light started painting our bedroom walls through the windows. I stood there watching Elena wrap herself in our sheet, while Colton nursed what would become an impressive bruise on his jaw. The officers were professional at least. They separated us, took statements, documented everything with mechanical efficiency. I sat in the living room, ice pack on my split knuckles, answering their questions in single syllables. Yes, I lived here. No, I'd never been violent before. Yes, that was my bedroom. Standard procedure in domestic incidents, the younger officer explained, handing me a temporary no-contact warning. Stay calm, keep your distance, let things cool down. Like this was just another Tuesday for them. Maybe it was. After they left, I found myself on the porch steps, watching the patrol car disappear around the corner. The late afternoon sun felt wrong somehow. Too normal, too bright for a day that had just shattered my world. My hand throbbed in time with my heartbeat. Behind me, the screen door creaked. Elena stood in the hallway, fully dressed now, arms folded across her chest. There wasn't a trace of shame in her posture, just cool defiance. She'd already switched gears, moved past the moment of discovery to whatever came next. "We'll need to talk about dividing everything," she said flatly, like we were discussing weekend chores instead of the wreckage of our marriage. The next morning, sunlight streamed through our kitchen windows, making everything look deceptively normal. Elena sat across from me at the table, both hands wrapped around her coffee mug like it was just another Tuesday. The familiarity of it made my stomach turn. "We need to discuss this like rational people," she said, her voice steady. "These things happen in marriages sometimes." My coffee went cold, untouched. "These things? You mean finding my wife in bed with another man? That kind of thing?" "Tim, this marriage..." She paused, choosing her words carefully. "It hasn't felt alive for a long time. We've been going through the motions." The kitchen clock ticked loudly in the silence. I remembered all those morning coffees, all those casual touches as we passed each other getting ready for work. Had they all been lies? Say his name, I said quietly. She blinked, thrown off her script. What? If we're being rational, if we're having this conversation, say his name. Tell me who you were with in our bed. Timothy, that's not constructive. Say his name. Elena's jaw tightened. She lifted her chin with that particular arrogance I'd never noticed before yesterday. Colton, she whispered, like she was doing me a favor by being honest. Something in my chest hardened to stone. The way she said it, casual, almost proud, made my hands shake. I gripped my coffee mug tighter to keep from throwing it. Hours crawled by. Around 2, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Let's be adults. Colton. Of course he'd try to control this too. I called the number immediately. He answered on the first ring. You stepped into my house, I said, keeping my voice low and steady. I reacted. Next time, it won't be heat, it'll be cold. Are you threatening me? He tried to sound authoritative, but I caught the tremor in his voice. I could press charges for assault. You're looking at serious. File whatever you need to file, I cut him off. But remember who crossed whose threshold. I hung up before he could respond. The afternoon sun was setting when the patrol car pulled up. Different officers this time, carrying official paperwork, a no-contact notice. Standard procedure after domestic incidents, they explained again. One wrong move, and I'd be the one forced to leave. Elena stood in the hallway watching, arms folded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. She knew what this meant. The system was giving her leverage. The battlefield had shifted from our bedroom to the courts. I stared at the papers in my hands. The legal language was cold, precise. This wasn't about emotion anymore. It was about documentation and evidence, about being smarter, not angrier. Walking toward the guest room, I whispered under my breath, "Time for evidence." Morning light crept through the blinds as I snapped photos of the rumpled sheets, my hands steady despite the rage churning in my gut. Each click of the camera felt like another nail in the coffin of my marriage. I remembered how Elena used to tease me about being too methodical, about how I kept receipts for everything. Guess that habit was about to pay off. I pulled up our phone records online, downloading months of data. The pattern jumped out immediately. Calls and texts to Colton's number, always during work hours, always when she thought I wouldn't notice. My printer hummed as I made copies, organizing everything into a fresh manila folder. The guest room looked sterile when I moved my clothes in. No photos, no memories, just empty walls and a bed that hadn't seen betrayal. I caught my reflection in the mirror, circles under my eyes, jaw clenched tight. You never expect to become this version of yourself, the guy documenting his wife's affair like some bitter detective. Attorney Neha Patel's office smelled like leather and coffee. She reviewed the folder contents while I sat across from her desk, watching her expression remain carefully neutral. You're angry, she said finally, looking up at me. Good. Let's turn it into paperwork. I want everything documented, I told her. Every lie, every meeting, every dime spent. She nodded, already making notes. Anger makes most men sloppy. But you're thinking clearly. Keep collecting. Build the case piece by piece. Courts love paper trails. Back home, I found Mr. Dawson tending his front yard. The old man had lived next door for years, always nodding hello, never getting involved in anyone's business, but today he waved me over. Been meaning to talk to you, he said, leaning on his rake. My doorbell camera, it catches your driveway. Been seeing that fancy car coming by when you're at work. Got it all saved if you need it. My throat tightened. Mr. Dawson, I'd appreciate that more than you know. He nodded once, understanding in his eyes. I'll get you the files. Some folks forget cameras see everything these days. That evening, I sat at the kitchen table scanning through months of phone bills. Elena walked in, saw what I was doing, and let out a sharp laugh. Really, Timothy? Going through old bills like some obsessed accountant? She grabbed a water bottle from the fridge. You'll never prove anything. I didn't look up, just kept noting timestamps and highlighting call durations. The sound of her heels clicked away down the hall, but I barely heard it. I was too focused on matching dates to hotel charges, building my case one paper at a time. Later, alone in the guest room, I uploaded everything to an encrypted drive. Photos, bills, Mr. Dawson's footage. Neha's words echoed in my head. Turn it into paperwork. Each file represented another crack in Elena's carefully constructed lies. My phone buzzed with a message from Kayla. Tim, I'm hearing things about Elena and her boss. Is it true? Please tell me it isn't. I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over the reply button. Kayla had always been more sister than sister-in-law to me. Now she was asking me to either confirm her worst fears about Elena or lie to protect the family peace. Kayla's headlights swept across my driveway around 8 that evening. I'd always liked Elena's younger sister. She had this straightforward way about her. No games, no pretense. Tonight her eyes were red-rimmed as she stepped out of her car. Just tell me straight, Tim, she said, hugging herself against the evening chill. What's really going on? I led her to the porch steps where we used to share summer beers and family stories. Now I spread out phone records, hotel receipts, and pulled up Mr. Dawson's doorbell footage on my phone. Each piece of evidence felt like turning over another poisoned card. That's Colton's car, I said quietly as the video showed his silver BMW sliding into my driveway at 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. Elena told me she was working from home that day. Kayla's hands trembled as she checked timestamps against the phone logs. All these calls, during work hours. Her voice cracked. God, Tim, I had no idea. She told Mom and Dad you were being paranoid, that you'd attacked Colton for no reason. Yeah, well, seems like there was a reason. Tears spilled down her cheeks as she watched another clip of Colton leaving our house, checking his collar in his car mirror. I'll talk to Mom and Dad, she whispered. They need to know the truth. We're behind you, Tim. All the way. The next morning, I walked into Elena's corporate office building with Neha beside me, both of us carrying folders. The HR director's office felt too warm, too cramped for the bomb we were about to drop. Company policy strictly prohibits relationships between managers and subordinates, Neha began, laying out documents. Mr. Reed expensed numerous client dinners at wine bars near Mr. McFarland's residence. The dates align perfectly with these phone records and security footage. The HR director's face tightened as she reviewed each piece. This is concerning, she said carefully. Very concerning. We've documented at least 12 violations of the fraternization policy, I added, plus expense account abuse to cover their meetings. Within an hour, both Elena and Colton were called to HR. Through the glass walls, I watched their faces shift from confidence to shock as suspension notices were handed over. Small victories, but they felt huge. That evening, my phone buzzed with an unknown number. This is Sharon Reed, a woman's voice said. Colton's wife, can we meet? The diner was nearly empty when Sharon slid into the booth across from me. She looked tired but determined, pulling out her phone without preamble. I found these last week, she said, showing me photos of Elena and Colton at hotel bars, intimate text messages, even selfies they'd taken in our bed. My bed. The same evidence from a different angle, completing the picture like a mirror reflecting back truth. They were careless, Sharon continued, her voice steady despite everything. Thought they were too smart to get caught. I'm filing for divorce tomorrow. I studied her face, no tears, no rage, just cold resolution. You handle your house, I said. I'll handle mine. Exactly. She reached across the table and we shook hands, a contract between survivors. It was past 11 when I got home. The house felt different now, charged with possibility instead of just pain. Then I saw Elena, leaning in the guest room doorway like she owned the whole damn world. You'll regret this, she whispered, eyes glittering in the dark. The morning light filtered through the guest room window as I lined up storage bins across the floor. Each one had a neat label: shoes, dresses, accessories. Elena's designer collection would be packed away properly. No dramatics, no revenge damage. Just clean, documented removal. Noah arrived around 9, coffee in hand and that steady look in his eyes that told me he had my back. Where do we start, brother? Closet first, I said, pulling open the master bedroom doors. Everything gets photographed, listed, and packed. Remember how your mom used to say to fold things carefully even if you were angry? That voice echoed as we worked. Jimmy Choo heels went into bubble wrap. Hermes scarves laid flat in tissue paper. The $3,000 Burberry coat she'd needed for client meetings that now had a different meaning, got its own garment bag. "This is like packing up a boutique," Noah muttered, helping me catalog another Gucci handbag. "Yeah, well, when this is done, she can open her own store somewhere else." Around 2, Neha called with news that lifted my spirits. "We've got a hearing date next week for exclusive possession," she said. "The evidence is strong, Timothy. Between the HR investigation and Mr. Dawson's footage, we can show pattern and intent." I spent the afternoon organizing folders, phone records, hotel receipts, doorbell videos, HR suspension notices. Each piece felt like another brick in a wall between Elena's lies and my truth. The sun was setting when Elena burst into the guest room, face flushed with fury. She took one look at the labeled bins and her designer life packed away, and something snapped. "You think you're so clever?" she snarled. "Getting me suspended? Turning my own sister against me? I'll make you pay for this humiliation." I kept folding clothes. "The truth did that, Elena. I just showed people where to look." "Truth?" She laughed, sharp and hollow. "Wait till you see what truth costs you." 3 hours later, a knock at the door changed everything. A deputy stood on the porch, holding paperwork in the porch light's glow. "Mr. McFarland? I have an emergency protective order. You'll need to leave the premises immediately." My hands shook as I read Elena's statement. Fears for her safety after previous violent incident, threatening behavior. Feels unsafe in her own home. The same home where she'd brought another man into our bed. "How long do I have?" I asked. 20 minutes to pack essentials." "I'll wait." I grabbed my laptop, some clothes, basic toiletries. Elena watched from the stairs as I stuffed everything into a duffel bag, her smile small and satisfied in the shadows. Noah's couch wasn't comfortable, but it was safe. The ceiling fan spun lazy circles above me as I lay there, mind racing through Elena's transformation from caught cheater to alleged victim. Each rotation of the blades matched the pounding in my temples. "She wants me gone," I whispered into the dark room. "But I've got the truth." Sleep came slowly, uneasy with dreams of locked doors and empty rooms. I woke up with a crick in my neck and the taste of anger in my mouth. Noah's couch wasn't meant for sleeping, but neither was my situation meant for fairness. The morning sun cut through his blinds while coffee brewed in the kitchen. "You look like hell," Noah said, sliding a mug across the counter. "Feel worse." I pulled out my phone and dialed Neha's number, not caring that it was barely 7 a.m. She answered on the second ring. "Timothy, I was about to call you. Tell me what happened." My voice came out steady, controlled. "Elena filed an emergency protection order. Claims she's afraid after the fight with Colton. But I've got something she doesn't know about." I forwarded Mr. Dawson's doorbell footage while we talked. The crystal clear video showing Colton shoving me first in the doorway before I struck back. Then came Sharon's screenshots, Elena's calculated texts about using my reaction for leverage. "When did she send these?" Neha asked, papers rustling in the background. "Right before it happened. She told Sharon, he'll lose it if he sees you here. Then we'll have leverage. It was a setup, Neha. This is exactly what we need." Her voice hardened with purpose. "I'm drafting our reply now. We'll get an emergency hearing first thing Monday. Pack a court suit." The weekend crawled. I stayed at Noah's, pacing between coffee refills and reviewing our evidence. Monday morning, I met Neha at the courthouse steps. Both of us early, both of us ready. Elena arrived with her attorney, chin high, playing the victim role to perfection. But perfection cracked when Neha presented our evidence to the judge. The doorbell footage played on the courtroom screen, showing Colton's first aggressive move. Elena's texts to Sharon appeared next, damning in their calculated clarity. The judge's face darkened as he reviewed everything. "Mrs. McFarland," he said, fixing Elena with a hard stare, "this court takes domestic violence seriously. That's precisely why we don't tolerate manipulation of protective orders for tactical advantage. Your own messages show premeditation." I watched Elena's mask slip as the judge continued. "The emergency order is dissolved, effective immediately. And let me be clear. Abuse of this system to gain advantage in your domestic matter will not be tolerated." Relief hit me like a wave. Neha squeezed my arm as we stood, whispering, "Go home, Timothy. It's your house again." When I pulled into my driveway 30 minutes later, Elena's car was already there. I found her in the bedroom, yanking designer clothes from the neatly labeled bins, cursing under her breath. "You think you're so smart," she spat, shoving a handful of silk blouses into a garbage bag. "You and that neighbor with his cameras. You and Sharon with her screenshots." I didn't answer. Instead, I walked downstairs to the dining room table, the same table where we'd once shared morning coffee and evening plans. Now it felt like a war room, scattered with legal papers and evidence files. "It's not about being smart," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now it's arithmetic." Elena's furious packing echoed from above, each thud of designer boots hitting the floor like a countdown to the next battle. The conference room felt too small for the weight it held. Elena sat across the polished table, wearing the cream silk blouse she'd bought for our anniversary dinner last year. The irony wasn't lost on me. Neha arranged papers beside me with quiet precision while Elena's attorney fidgeted with his tie. "We can be civil about this," Elena said, her voice honey smooth. "Split the equity, divide the accounts, move forward like adults." She even managed a practiced smile. I leaned forward, letting my hands rest flat on the cool wood. The fluorescent lights caught my wedding band. I hadn't taken it off yet, not because of hope, but because I wanted her to see it during this moment. "You lit the match in my house," I said quietly, and told me to admire the glow. "Civil is what I've been, Elena. Now it's arithmetic." Neha opened the first folder. "Let's review the documentation," she said, sliding copies across the table. Hotel receipts fanned out like playing cards. Phone records stretched across months. Mr. Dawson's doorbell footage played on the conference room screen, timestamp clear as day. "Additionally," Neha continued, "we have the HR determination from their workplace investigation." She produced the termination letters. "Both Mrs. McFarland and Mr. Reed have been terminated for cause, effective immediately. No severance." Elena's smile cracked. Her attorney shifted uncomfortably. "And as of 9 a.m. this morning," Neha added, "Mrs. Reed has filed for divorce against Mr. Reed, citing adultery with supporting evidence that parallels our own." The judge reviewed everything methodically. When he looked up, his decision was clear in his eyes before he spoke. "Given the evidence of misconduct and the prior attempt to abuse the protective order system, I'm granting Mr. McFarland exclusive use of the marital home. Mrs. McFarland has 48 hours to remove her personal belongings." Later that evening, Noah helped me arrange the labeled bins in the foyer. Elena arrived with her sister to pack, shooting daggers with every trip up and down the stairs. "Proud of yourself?" she hissed, stuffing designer shoes into a garbage bag. "Playing victim while you destroy everything?" I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say that the evidence hadn't already proven. The sun was setting when they finished, casting long shadows across the driveway. As Elena's car pulled away, Colton's BMW rolled in, engine growling. He stepped out, all corporate swagger despite the termination letter in his wake. "You won't get a dime from me," he sneered, squaring his shoulders. "Not 1 cent." I looked at him, really looked at him. The man who'd walked into my house like he owned it, who'd helped Elena strike the match. Now he stood in my driveway, trying to claim one last piece of control. "You're right," I said calmly. "I won't get anything from you." I let the pause hang between us before finishing. "The court will." Neha's office hummed with quiet determination as she filed the civil claim against Colton. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with practiced precision, while I sat in the leather chair across from her desk, watching each page emerge from the printer. "Intentional interference," she explained, pointing to key sections. "Emotional distress, therapy costs, lost wages from missing work during this mess, moving expenses, legal fees. It adds up." She gave me a knowing look. "The court doesn't care about revenge, Timothy, but they do care about measurable damages. Remember how your parents taught you to count every penny when balancing your piggy bank? This was like that, but we were counting the cost of broken trust instead of quarters." The next week we sat in court while the judge reviewed Elena's emergency protection order, the one she'd filed to force me out of the house. The truth came out in stark black and white. Her texts to Colton plotting leverage, the doorbell footage showing his aggression first. The judge's face darkened as he read. "Mrs. McFarland," he said, peering over his glasses. "This court takes a dim view of manipulating protective orders for tactical advantage. You'll cover Mr. McFarland's legal fees in full." Elena's face went slack. Her attorney shuffled papers, avoiding eye contact. 3 days later, Colton's new workplace received garnishment paperwork. I didn't need to be there to picture his face when HR called him in. Sharon texted me a photo of his belongings piled in contractor bags on their driveway, his precious suits getting damp in the morning mist. "He's checking into the extended stay on Highway 9, she wrote. Karma isn't just a concept anymore. I drove past Elena's new place once, a tired apartment complex on the edge of town where the rent signs never come down. Through the window, I glimpsed her rushing out in waitress blacks, the kind of double-shift uniform that pays in cash at the end of each night. The designer clothes she'd packed so carefully wouldn't see much use there. Standing in our empty house that evening, I caught a whisper of her perfume in the master bedroom, that expensive jasmine scent she'd always loved. It hit me like a punch to the gut, not because I missed her, but because it reminded me how completely she'd betrayed everything we'd built. The mail arrived with official court letterhead on top. Inside, printed in clean black type, was our final divorce hearing date. I ran my thumb across the raised seal, remembering how proud we'd been to mail our wedding invitations years ago. Different paper, different promises, different truth. I set the letter on the kitchen counter and poured a glass of water, listening to the ice crack. In 2 weeks, we'd sit in that courtroom one last time. But the war was already over. I could feel it in the silence of the house, in the empty closets, in the way Elena's perfume was fading like a ghost. The late afternoon sun slanted through the windows, catching dust motes where her photos used to hang. Mr. Dawson waved from his yard next door, a silent reminder of how neighbors had become allies in this fight. I raised my glass to him, grateful for simple honesty in a world that had shown me its sharp edges. The courthouse had that familiar sterile smell, paper, wood polish, and anxiety. Elena sat across the simple wooden table, wearing what I recognized as her board meeting outfit, navy blazer, pearl earrings, perfect makeup, like she could dress up betrayal and make it look professional. Attorney Neha Patel arranged our papers with quiet efficiency, while Elena's lawyer whispered something in her ear. The morning light filtered through tall windows, casting long shadows across the table between us. My hands were steady as I uncapped my pen. You know that moment before a storm breaks, when the air gets heavy and time seems to slow down? That's what it felt like in that room. Elena kept glancing at me, waiting. I knew that look. She expected a speech, some final dramatic moment where I'd try to wound her with words. That's what she would have done. But I'd learned something during these months of calculated justice. Sometimes the simplest truth cuts deepest. "You don't get me," I said, my voice low and clear. "You don't get this home. You don't get my future." I met her eyes directly. "You get the sum of your choices." The judge reviewed our settlement agreement with practiced efficiency. The terms were clean. I kept the house, my retirement stayed intact, and Elena would pay my legal fees. No alimony, no loose ends, no room for future games. The pen scratched across paper as we signed, each signature another brick in the wall between past and future. The notary's stamp came down with a heavy thunk. Official, final, done. I remembered our wedding day, how Elena had practiced her signature with her new last name for weeks beforehand. Now she was just as methodically signing it away. The irony wasn't lost on me. When I stood up, Elena started to say something, but I was already walking toward the door. The marble hallway echoed with my footsteps, each one carrying me further from the life I'd thought I'd have. I pushed through the heavy courthouse doors and stepped into sunlight. The air outside hit my face like freedom. Clean, clear, silent in all the right ways. For the first time in months, I could breathe without tasting anger in the back of my throat. That evening, Noah fired up his grill while Kayla arranged chairs in his backyard. The smell of charcoal and marinating chicken filled the air. Noah handed me a beer, condensation cold against my palm. "You did it, man," he said simply. Kayla squeezed my shoulder as she passed. To freedom, she raised her glass. I watched them move around each other, grabbing plates, arguing about whether the chicken needed more seasoning. Their laughter felt real, unmarked by pity or judgment. Just family. The kind you choose, the kind that stands beside you when the world cracks open. As the sun set, casting long shadows across Noah's lawn, I found myself actually laughing at one of his terrible jokes. The sound surprised me, natural, unforced, alive. But later, unlocking my front door, I paused with my key in the lock. The house loomed dark and quiet, full of rooms where Elena's betrayal had played out like a poison script. Would these walls ever feel like mine again? Or would they always echo with the sound of her laugh mixed with his voice, that moment when my world tilted sideways? 6 months passed like water flowing around a stone. The rhythm of my days took on a different shape, cleaner, steadier. Every morning at 6, my running shoes hit the pavement. The fall air stung my lungs as I pushed through 3 miles, then 4, then 5. The therapist said exercise helps rewire trauma. She was right. Twice a week, I sat in Dr. Kim's office learning to name the anger without letting it name me. Healing isn't linear, she'd remind me. And I'd nod, thinking of how some days felt lighter, while others still carried the weight of what happened in that bedroom. But Sundays? Sundays became sacred. Noah would text by noon. Grill's hot. Bring beer. Kayla always showed up with too many side dishes and stories about her dating mishaps. We'd sit in lawn chairs talking about nothing important, letting the important things stay buried where they belonged. I thought about Elena sometimes. Couldn't help it. Word got around that she was renting a studio apartment on Miller Street, the kind of place where the mailboxes hung crooked and the parking lot flooded every rain. She picked up shifts at Riley's Bar and Grill, counting tips at closing time. A long fall from corporate strategy meetings. Her designer clothes gathered dust in storage she could barely afford. The whispers followed her everywhere. At the grocery store, mothers who used to invite her to book club turned down other aisles. Her own family kept their distance. Kayla told me their parents had taken down Elena's wedding photos like they were erasing a mistake. The woman who got caught in her own bed, that's what she became, no matter how straight she held her shoulders or how carefully she applied her makeup. Colton didn't fare better. His extended stay hotel off Highway 9 became a permanent address while Sharon kept their house in the divorce. Every month, like clockwork, the court clerk called about his garnishment payments. His LinkedIn profile stayed frozen in time, his industry connections evaporating like morning dew. At his old office, they used his name as a cautionary tale during new hire orientation. I saw him once at Mason's Hardware. He pretended to study paint swatches while people whispered and pointed. His shirt collar had frayed edges and his shoes needed polish. Small details that showed how far he'd fallen. Pride is expensive when you're paying off judgment debts. My house stayed clean, organized, mine. But some nights, walking past that bedroom door, the memories would replay in vivid detail. The sound of unfamiliar laughter, the way the floor seemed to tilt, the metallic taste of rage. I'd painted the walls, bought new furniture, changed every lock. Still, shadows lingered in the corners like stubborn ghosts. One quiet Tuesday evening, I stood in the kitchen, staring at the deed spread flat on the counter. The paper felt heavy in my hands, not just with legal weight, but with everything that had happened between these walls. Victory tasted different than I'd imagined. Winning the house had felt like justice, but living here felt like choosing to sleep beside ghosts. It's time to let this place go, I whispered to the empty room. Sarah Linden from Valley Realty walked through my front door on a crisp October morning, clipboard in hand and sympathy carefully tucked behind her professional smile. I'd picked her because she hadn't known Elena or me. No awkward questions, no neighborhood gossip to navigate. Beautiful bones, she said, running her hand along the kitchen counter where I'd made thousands of morning coffees. We'll list it above market. Divorce sales usually go quick. I nodded, following her from room to room. Each space held a different weight now. The living room where Elena and I had assembled furniture on weekends. The hall closet still bearing the mark where I'd punched it that first night. The bedroom I'd repainted twice, trying to cover memories with fresh color. "You're sure about this?" Sarah asked, pen hovering over the listing agreement. More sure than I've been about anything, I replied, signing my name with steady strokes. The next weeks blurred into a parade of boxes and bubble wrap. Noah showed up with his truck and pizza, helping me sort through 7 years of accumulated life. "You're doing the right thing, man," he said, carefully wrapping photos from before everything went sideways. Some houses are just houses. Others become tombs. I remembered the taste of Elena's morning coffee, the way she'd dance while loading the dishwasher, how Colton's cologne had lingered in my sheets that day. Each memory went into boxes marked "donate" or straight into garbage bags. By the time the first open house started, my life fit into neat stacks in the garage. The offers came fast, 3 above asking within days. I accepted the highest without negotiation. At the closing table, I watched new owners sign their dreams into these walls, their eyes bright with possibilities. They had no idea about the shadows they were buying, and I felt no need to tell them. Some ghosts belong buried. Elena heard about the sale through the neighborhood grapevine. She sent a text I didn't answer. "Selling our home? Guess you're running away after all." I almost laughed at her attempt to wound. The house stopped being ours the moment she invited Colton into it. Word reached me through Kayla that Elena had driven past multiple times, watching strangers carry out furniture she once helped choose. Each removal truck felt like another rejection of their shared history. Good. Let her feel it. Colton took the news harder. Sharon told me he'd been ranting at the hotel bar, bitter that I'd profited from the house while his paycheck still bore garnishment stamps. His pride, already bruised, couldn't stand watching me choose to walk away, rather than being forced out. My new apartment downtown came with high ceilings and windows that caught the morning sun. I arranged my furniture with deliberate care, placing each piece where I wanted it, not where habit dictated. The coffee maker still set itself at night, but now it sat on a counter that held no memories of betrayal. Listen, if you're standing in the wreckage of what you thought was unshakable, hearing that hollow ring of betrayal in your ears, know this: there's power in choosing what to keep and what to burn. They tried to make me a victim in my own home. Instead, I turned it into evidence, then currency, then freedom. I didn't just survive them. I ended them, and I kept myself. I believe stories such as this find us for a reason. If this one touches you, please subscribe. I share a new one every day. In the meantime, there are 2 stories on the screen that are even better.